All right, let's start from the beginning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. As usual, I'm enormously excited to share with you another Meet the Masters conversation with someone that we've been really trying to nail down for quite some time, Matt Levatich, the CEO of a booming, growing, teenage motorcycle company called Harley-Davidson, Inc. Please welcome Matt to this conversation. So just for review, and you all should know this, Scale Up Milwaukee is an initiative of the Greater Milwaukee Committee, and we exist to promote growth. We know the great things that happen when companies grow, and we want to make growth a cultural norm for this region and this state. And so we have Meet the Masters in order to expose growing business owners and growing business employees like yourselves to an example of someone who's grown a great company. And so this conversation is going to focus on growth and the people that achieve that. Do not shy away from the hard questions about decision making and people. But that's what we really need to understand to replicate the success of Harley-Davidson. So I'm going to start. There's so many things that I wanted to ask about, and there's so many places that I wanted to start. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I looked at your history and where you grew up and where you were born and your wife and your kids and your high school yearbook pictures and all of it. And to a certain degree, it all pointed to you working at Harley. Your dad had motorcycles, you showed an early interest in mechanical engineering, and essentially you had one half job for a couple of years before you decided to get a master's degree and do the rotational program at Harley. You've had one job. Tell us, how does a guy with one job become the CEO of the world's best motorcycle company?
Oh boy. So I joined Harley in 1994 out of Northwestern's Triple M program, which is a dual degree engineering, management, and MBA program. And I did not, in my mind at that time, aspire in any way, shape, or form to work for Harley-Davidson. I have a passion for product. I have a passion for manufacturing. That's why I went to that program. In my life, I enjoyed motorcycles, including riding after college and during my first job when I had my first on-road motorcycle. And I feel I'm very fortunate because when I met my wife, I had that motorcycle, so there was never a discussion about whether it belonged or not. So it's never come up since. And so I had this. My real passion was for I wanted to be at a branded product company where manufacturing was part of its core. That's what from a business perspective, because that's what really motivates me. I had a friend at Northwestern who was trying to disabuse me of that idea because he had come from Procter & Gamble, and he was in manufacturing, and it was a product branded company, if you will, obviously many brands. And he was trying to convince me that you do not want to work for a consumer products company in manufacturing, because in consumer products, manufacturing is not strategic. So his frame of reference was marketing ran Procter & Gamble, and when Procter & Gamble marketing people wanted a different shape plastic bottle to put the same blue liquid in, that was as strategic as manufacturing got. And so I listened to him and I thought about those things, and then boom, Harley comes on campus, and I'm like, this is where you're wrong, right? This is a company that has beautifully designed and engineered products, that manufacturing is a core part of the company, and it always has been. And this is where it all comes together for me. And the interest in motorcycling was just the sort of added icing on the cake, so to speak. But what it was really about was here's a company where I can bring all of my interests and passions together. And that was 24 years ago. and I have not been the CEO for more than maybe almost 4 years now. So there were a lot of jobs within Harley in between, and I am here in this role not because I set out to be in this role, but because what I set out to do in my career positioned me for this role. I always tell people, and we have a saying in motorcycling, by the way. Who's a rider in the room? Anybody? Okay.
And just for Matt, who wants to be a rider?
Yeah, please, everybody raise your hand. And importantly, whose children want to be riders, because we need you to. There's a saying, and it has different forms, but they teach new riders that you will hit what you're looking at. So make sure you're looking at the right thing. And I think that is, so for example, if you're doing a U-turn and you're looking at the opposite curb saying, I do not want to hit that opposite curb, you will hit the curb. So they teach you to turn your head and look where you want to go, and you will naturally go there. And this is something they teach early motorcyclists, and I think it applies as well to careers and business, is that you will hit what you're looking at. So make sure you're looking at the right things. I was not looking to become the CEO of Harley. I was not actually looking to be a part of a company that was as big as Harley. I'm more of an entrepreneurial sort of small company person. But Harley is this nice blend of big brand, big, punches way above its weight for its size. So it has a small company operating footprint and feel, and we're very focused in what we do. So I can kind of marry both things.
So,
But what I was looking for was career challenge, right? Growth, learning, and Harley was growing, and there were just opportunities that I was afforded that I really, in some ways, had no business, no demonstrated capability to move to Europe and launch a sport bike brand as a mechanical engineer with a business degree and no experience with launching brands and living in Europe. And off I go. And so the growth profile of the company at that time afforded me the opportunity to do things and be challenged in ways that I wouldn't otherwise be challenged. And that's what positioned me for this role ultimately.
So I'm interested, most of your professional life has been spent at, an old company, some would call a legacy company, right? And how did you really create a relationship with growth? Because you guys are $6.5 billion. You're not going to double next year. This is not that kind of hyper accelerated growth that we often talk about. So how do you learn about growth from that position?
So you use the word legacy, and and Joanne and Pat have heard this a number of times. Harley is a legacy brand and a legacy company. When you say the word legacy, most people think history, and in fact, a lot of us within the company talk a lot about our past, right? And I'm constantly reminding everybody that legacy isn't actually the road we've traveled, it's the road we're on. And it has to bring forward everything that is behind us, but is inherently about the future. And that's how, in my mind, I think about growth. Where is this company going? This is our time, right? What are we going to do to propel the company in the right direction at the right speed with the right kind of work? And that is growth, that is value creation, that is strengthening capabilities, that's all the things that make the company stronger tomorrow than it was yesterday. And I would say right now we are romancing growth. We're courting growth. We're not growing. So this is dating, with growth. What we have been doing since the downturn is working really hard at strengthening the core capabilities of the company. And we tackled that first with manufacturing and with product development. We are world class in manufacturing, not to say we can't be better, because our mentality is about how can we be better, but at manufacturing and at product development, and we are now working on the very important aspect of cultivating demand in the marketplaces around the world. And without the first two legs of that stool, it would have been hard to do the third one. So for example, product development. We just announced this summer our plan to accelerate growth and value creation, which is called More Roads to Harley-Davidson. It's fundamentally about where demand exists, the nature of the demand, the nature of the consumer. How can we adapt and evolve as a company to show up differently in accordance with our values and our principles and everything else, but to show up differently to inspire and create the next generation of riders. How can we do that through product? How can we do that through what we call broader access? How we meet new people on their terms where they want to be? How do we do it through strengthening our dealer network? So that's leveraging product development and manufacturing, but it is a lot about cultivating and capturing growth and demand in the marketplaces that exist around the world. And the plan has a very exciting component of modernizing, if you will, not what we stand for, but how we show up and with what products and for what customers. And so this to me is the third piece of retooling the company and preparing it for the next century. And I'm very excited about it because we've done it in a way that is very true to how the company was formed in Milwaukee in 1903. There were four young adults who had a passion for trying to figure out how to put a motor in a bicycle. And there were hundreds of competitors. And I love the fact that they had their distinct roles. There was one that was responsible for engineering, or what we would call product development, one that was responsible for manufacturing, one that was responsible for sales and marketing and distribution, and the words we use today, and one who was responsible for running the company. And when you look at Harley-Davidson through 115 years, we are still doing what we did at the very beginning, and we are still focused on being great at manufacturing, being great at product development, and increasingly being great at cultivating and achieving demand and growth in the marketplace by leveraging what we do as a company. And I think that's awesome. There are very few companies who you can look at and say they're doing the same thing they did today that they were doing back in the beginning. There are very few companies that are 115 years old. And I think there's so much power in that. And that is the legacy that we are bringing forward to move ahead as a company. Being very true to who we are, but modernizing and building the capabilities for the future.
So one of the things that I find incredibly audacious, and of course we have a ton of business owners in this audience, and you did something that I would never advise most businesses to do. You set out a 10-year strategy, right? So consultants and coaches and everyone else would say, 10-year strategy is actually not a strategy, it's just a vision. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what gave you the confidence that that was a reasonable thing to do? I mean, that's wild. In a context of a 115-year-old company, 10 years is not that audacious. When you sort of put together the road we've been on for 115 years, and you say, okay, here's the next milepost, out 10 years, 2027, and it wasn't as much a strategy as it was a vision, right? So it was, we are setting out to build the next generation of Harley-Davidson riders globally. And we had 5 core objectives. We still have those same 5 core. How will we do that? How are we going to bracket and contain, right, what it is we're after, what are the swim lanes and those objectives that help us drive to that outcome. The strategies to do that are much more evergreen, right? Mm-hmm. Situations change year to year. How do we look annually at how do we need to tweak and adjust and enhance? So in fact, we set out that in January of 2017, and here in July of 2018, 18 months later, we put forward more roads to Harley-Davidson. Same vision, same 5 objectives, accelerated strategies. So the world's dynamic, our capabilities are growing. How do we repackage and retool and get more focused on driving growth and value creation given what's going on around us? Mm-hmm. And I expect that we will do that at that sort of, it's at least annually, and there's sort of monthly, stuff going on within the business. Annually, do we need to change anything? What do we need to change? Is it meaningful? Is it significant? Is it worth sort of codifying and putting out publicly or not? And we'll decide as and when that's necessary. We felt this summer is very important. There are a lot of people that are wondering,
What's going on at Harley? You know, our U.S. numbers we're not growing in the United States. The industry, of which we are a significant portion, is not growing. Ridership, why are we creating the next generation of riders? Because we need riders. I talk, you know, often to people and try and characterize this differently. We have said as a company that we have to shift our mentality from we build motorcycles to we build riders. And every day we have to walk in, and instead of looking ourselves in the mirror in the morning and say, I'm going to work and we make great motorcycles, we need to go to work and say we build great riders. And when we make that statement, it causes us to have different thoughts about the nature of our work. And it causes us to have different conversations with, for example, our dealers who also need to be thinking they're in the business of building riders. And why is that important? Because, and I use a different example for people. If you're a skier, you care about ski gear. If you're not a skier, you don't know anything about ski gear, and you don't care about ski gear, and you don't care what the ski brands and companies are doing. You don't read the ski magazines, right? So this is about riders. It is about riding. If we don't have people riding, people won't care about motorcycles. And so the emphasis is the right emphasis. And ridership is not just new riders. It's keeping existing riders riding more. I'm leaving at the end of this talk. I've got a few things I have to take care of, and I'm going with my wife to the UP on my motorcycle. And in 24 years of working at Harley-Davidson, I've ridden with her hundreds of times, but we have never ridden by ourselves. There always have been others with us, and we are excited. Not that we don't like riding with other people, don't get the wrong impression, but we're excited for this opportunity. We just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary on Sunday. We're excited to go together on a motorcycle ride. And in fact, because of this trip and because it's chilly and it might be raining up there and so forth, we got more interested in the gear that's available to make it more comfortable. And she went off to a dealership to buy some things at the last minute to make sure that we have a good and comfortable ride. So when people are thinking about riding, they're interested in the products and the gear and the experiences and the camaraderie. And so putting our emphasis on that helps the company unlock growth potential and do it through products and experiences. So new products, broader access, stronger dealers, those are the themes of the work we're doing within our strategy to grow the next generation of riders.
So you know as much as anyone, if not more so, that operating in a changing environment is difficult. So, you know, your very business is being challenged by technology shifts. Your core customers are increasingly becoming
Mother Nature is intervening.
Yes, that was so much nicer than what I was going to say.
Yeah, I can see where you're going.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, how do you think about responding to these things that we can't change? You know, so I've read so much about. You seem to be really good at focusing and sort of putting a name on challenges and putting a name on the strategy that you're going to use to identify these 4 market segments, and we go after them. And technology is happening, so we have to. How do you when you're sleeping, when you're getting in bed, what are the processes that you use to kind of make these big, bold decisions about where to take this company?
Well, I number one, I have a lot of help, so I don't want to, and I think I never want it to be about me. I have a role to play. And I have a great team. Joanne's here, she's on my team, and she's got 28 years at the company and marketing and communications. And we as a team, we talk about these issues and we help each other find the right way to talk about them. We spend a lot of time on leadership, and in my own mind, leadership is a quality, not a position. It's not a title. And I believe that the qualities of leaders can be observed by somebody coming out of college, that they possess those leadership qualities. And to me, one of them that I'm most passionate about is curiosity. And I don't think, so we have 5 dimensions of potential that we use to talk about that are sort of innate qualities of people and how, and they're observable in 20-year-olds or 50-year-olds or whatever the case may be. And curiosity is one of them. And leaders have to actually have all 5 in our view, and they have to be strong in all 5. And the reason I love curiosity as a dimension of this is because to me curiosity is just this innate. It isn't a desire. It isn't a. It's a compulsion to ask why not, what if, how come. You know, I think it's fascinating that we think about if you're a parent and you remember your young children. They incessantly ask why, and then eventually the parent says, "Because I said so," right? But we as humans are born, I think most of us, with this really incredible curiosity, and it's about learning, and it's about sort of biological preparation. But somehow, for whatever reason, it gets taught out of people, and some people persevere and never lose that sense of wonder and interest in what could be and how come the things are there and what do we need to do about it. And to me, that this is the real core element of what strong growth-oriented companies do, what growth-oriented people do for their own career, for their own life, what leaders have to bring to the environment of a company. Is to just constantly be asking, why not, what if, how come, and then let's get about it, right? Let's do something about that. Then you get into things like motivation, determination, insights, and connectedness, which are the other 4 dimensions of potential that we talk about within the company. And my contention is that we have about 6,000 employees at Harley. I want 6,000 leaders. I want 6,000 people who get up in the morning and look themselves in the mirror and say, what am I going to do? Why not, how come, what if? And work together to strengthen the company. So that spirit, to me, has to be present. And as a leader, I have to cultivate and encourage and nurture that spirit within the company, which we're doing as a leadership team. In a certain way, it's a sense of dissatisfaction with whatever status quo you have within yourself. I mean, I think that I take this personally. And why did I have the career I had at Harley? Because I'm personally interested in my own growth and my own challenge. I want to be as close to the edge of failure as I can be because it's exciting there for me. I'm learning at my maximum potential. I'm experiencing new things. And as long as I don't fall off the edge of failure, I'm at my most alive. And so far, right, that's been the case. And so it's a very personal thing to me. And that's about my own personal growth and development, and then the growth of the team, the growth of the company, the development. So, there are a lot of components in that. But when you ask, what do I do when I go to sleep at night? I go to sleep. What do I do when I get up in the morning? I look myself in the mirror and say, what today, right?
So let's talk about failure. When have you failed? I mean, so in 2009 or 2008, Harley acquires MV Agusta, and they send you out there to basically restart a factory and get the operation going again. And then 2009, Harley divests of MV Agusta. Actually, sort of
2010, yeah.
2010.
I came back in 2009, and it took us another year to get rid of it.
To actually sell it off. Was that a failure? Was that your failure? Was that?
Well, I think, what I do think about at night is I replay the tapes, right, of all the things I could have done better, and it's little things, I should have said this, I should have said it that way, I shouldn't have said that. It's part of reflection to me is a core of learning, right? And I have not had any spectacular failures.
You have not?
I don't think I personally don't think I've had any spectacular failures, but I've had a lot of little ones, and I think it's kind of like a tremors instead of an earthquake, right? And just pay attention to the tremors and learn from them. as a company, that is a great example of a management team that wasn't reading all the signs in all the right ways, wasn't processing there's a saying that I love from a professor I had, which is there's no credit given for solving in the right way the wrong problem. So problem identification is so important. What problem are we trying to solve before we run off and try and solve it? That was activity that was, I think, formulated on the basis of some wrong assumptions and compounded by the global economic meltdown. If 2008, 2009 hadn't happened, we'd probably still own that company. That was a catalyst for us to make tough decisions about Buell as well, which we had owned for 16 years. We didn't have the luxury of side projects. So that's why we don't own it. That's not why we shouldn't have bought it, which is a different set of circumstances. I attribute that to solving in the right way the wrong problem. And I learned a lot from going over there and spending a year trying to run an Italian motorcycle company. And I don't speak Italian, which is, I felt like I suppose what someone who's missing one of their senses feels like. They over-index to their remaining senses. So a blind person hears really well. A deaf person sees things other people don't see. I would walk past the break room, which was a tiny little room with a vending machine that served espresso, and there'd be 40 Italian people in there, and I would be like, what are they talking about? What is the chatter on the floor? What's the mood of the factory? And these are things that were very helpful for me and from a sense of humility, right? When you're denied one of your key management levers and strengths, how do you lead? So there was a lot of challenge in that and my wife likes I'm very romantic about that time. I often say it's like you have a great dream and you wake up in the morning, and by the time you're blinking your eyes and brushing your teeth, you can't remember the dream, and the harder you try, the quicker it fades. That was that year for me, and I talk about that with my wife, and she looks at me and goes, you don't remember what you were like when you came home every day, just frustrated and tired because it was hard. But that's learning and growth, for me personally. The company, I think, again, was solving in a good way the wrong problem.
I really love that framing. So what's your advice for all of us identifying, the right problem and the right way to solve the right problem?
Well, the best advice, and it kind of will go back to curiosity, and it's the Japanese tactic of the 5 whys. And what they typically do in problem solving is to ask why 5 times as a means of making sure they're getting to the root of the problem. And you should practice it, when someone says something. Well, Joanne, why do you say that? And you say, because. Well, why do you say that? Because. Well, that's interesting. Well, why is that? Well, because. And you can work with your teams using that. It's a very constructive, by the way, it reinforces curiosity and asking questions to make sure that, no, we're not solving a symptom, we're solving the problem. So that's one piece of advice. I think the other thing that I think is very important and not often talked about is, are you clear as a company what you are there to do? What do you stand for? And this is expressed in, purpose most commonly. But what I love about Harley is we never have to have that conversation because we've been about the same thing, as I mentioned, since the very beginning. But it is important to actually express that in ways that are liberating, not constraining. Mm-hmm. So when we say we're about freedom, strength, independence, self-expression, those are liberating ideas versus saying we're made in USA. I think about New Glarus. I mean, who drinks Spotted Cow? I love the fact that on all their boxes they say only in Wisconsin, which is a really awesome statement of a differentiated point of view, but it's a constraint to growth. And I admire, on one hand, their willingness to say that, and then I think to myself, is that going to work 10 years from now? When, I don't know, maybe they're purchased by InBev or something, and somehow that logo disappears, and then they don't have their brand purpose anymore. So I would urge you all to really be clear about what you stand for, what's your purpose, what are you there to do, and make sure that it is as liberating as possible, not constraining.
So that brings me to a slightly difficult to answer question, which is, your purpose has been very clear, right? So it's, I think Harley in the last 30 years has differentiated itself from just being a motorcycle company that makes a very particular noise, right? That has a very narrow view of who its riders are and who its dealers are and so on. You all have been pretty pointed about going after some new demographic audiences and markets. What is it about that clearly defined purpose that you think historically wasn't resonating with, you all are going after women and African Americans and Latin Americans and the rest of the globe and people who are 18 to 34.
Yeah.
Now, what is it about those things that are, and should you think about shifting to accommodate them?
I think when some of the things that you mentioned are almost like the 5 whys, or symptoms versus problems, right? Or attributes versus core values. So, loud pipes, that's an attribute, not a core value of freedom, independence, self-expression. Those things for that generation of riders on those products manifested themselves in loud pipes. Right, and if this comes to play in particular when we talk about an electric Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and
I was prepared for the gasp.
And it's one of the most thrilling automotive, and I love products. It's the most thrilling powered vehicle of any kind I've ever experienced, and that is an emotional feeling that I have, that we want our customers to have. And when we talk about product design, we focus on the emotion that we want the customer to experience, not the attributes of the product that, like loud pipes, right? So it is about the look, it is about the sound, and it is about the feel, and it is 2 dimensions to feel. How the bike feels, like a little bit of vibration, or the heartbeat of a V-twin engine, but it's also how I feel experiencing the product, the bike. So those emotional goals are the foundation of product design and product development. They have manifested themselves in certain ways over the past 20 or 30 or 50 years, but they can manifest themselves differently. And that challenge was most exposed in, you put to the team an electric Harley-Davidson motorcycle. How does it look? How does it feel? How does it sound? It's not gonna, people ask us, and with all seriousness, do you have loudspeakers where you pump in the sound of a Harley? And that's where we have to be smarter than that. It has an amazing sound. It sounds like a Star Wars, TIE fighter. And that creates an emotional connection for the rider. And it was deliberately designed to have a specific and compelling sound. It has nothing to do with every other product. But you only get there when you know what your core is and what are you really delivering. The ideals of freedom, strength, independence, self-expression, individual identity, which is one of the ways that manifests itself for people, those ideals go back to the dawn of time. The philosophers in Greece and so forth were talking about these things. It's becoming even more important today as the humanity grows, how do I show up as an individual? How am I unique and special and different? And we hear this from people of all ages, all genders, it crosses borders, cultures, generations. The human need to be an individual. And how does our product enable that for people? How can they find their freedom on Harley-Davidson? And so when we talk about that, we arrive at different, and I think better ways of activating that. We have what's called a brand legend. This is another. What's important here is to challenge these things and see how they can be more liberating. So, for example, our brand legend helps everybody in the company know what to wear in the morning. I'll be as simple as that. You know, what should I wear to this talk? Should I wear jeans or a suit? What do we stand for as a company and a brand? We stand for we're icon, bond, muscle, fire. These are some of the terms, and they're descriptors to help people understand that in the center of those four, icon, muscle, bond, fire, is this unifying statement of rebel. Okay? And icon, muscle, fire, bond could probably apply to 50 companies. When you connect it all with the idea of rebel, wow, it's hard to imagine what other company could have that brand legend. How do people interpret rebel? It is something that we really started talking a lot about. And in a lot of cases, it comes through in some of the other brand elements as my way or the highway. It's not the destination, it's the journey. Stick it to the man, you know, all these sorts of things. And I think in a lot of cases, when people hear the word rebel, and I bet a lot of you did as well, it has a negative connotation. And most of the things I said had a negative connotation. But we are turning that into a positive connotation. What are you rebelling for? Not what are you rebelling against? And we have a new brand platform as of last year, which is all for freedom, freedom for all, which is inherently more positive and more inviting and more aspirational than stick it to the man, my way or the highway, some of these other things, loud pipes, et cetera, et cetera. And this is all part of our conscious effort to be more inclusive, more inviting, more interesting to more people by being who we are differently. So all this stuff is actually, to me, we rarely talk about it outside the company. We probably don't talk about it enough inside the company. But these are sort of foundational elements of how you make smart decisions. Because I'm not making decisions. People think, oh, you must. I make very few decisions. People everywhere are making decisions about how the company shows up. And we need to empower them to make the right decision, not control them to make the right decision. And these things are very foundational elements of liberating people to show up at their fullest, show up in the right way, advance the company in the way it needs to be advanced. So that's a lot of philosophical stuff. I hope that made sense.
Yeah. It's what we expected from you.
You know, yeah, that's.
So I want to leave a little bit of room for questions. We can probably take one or two. Please.
My perception is that you have a lot of people, including yourself and some of the folks here, who have been at Harley for over 20 years. Is that an accurate perception? And then how are you keeping folks that long? And is it continuing with this latest generation of employees?
You know, I don't actually know the answer, but I tend to agree with you. We have an incredible level of employee passion and loyalty and commitment. It manifests itself in tenure. It's a great place. I mean, it's captivating. If you're of the mindset of how I described it, you can't imagine yourself anywhere else. I can't imagine myself anywhere else. And I think a lot of employees, again, if it works for you, if these values and these principles you identify with personally, and I think it actually is more about that than I like to ride. And we're pretty clear and we're pretty consistent about that. So yeah, I think so, that it's true. I also think that it is an important measure of the next generation, because we hear all sorts of stories about they are flighty and they don't have commitment and they job hop. We're not seeing that with the people that we hire. We have a great intern program, and it's not the one you may have read about on social media, but where we look for HR people and finance people and manufacturing engineers and supply chain, and we cultivate their career in the company, and we have very low turnover in that. It's been running for 6 or 8 years, and these are the future leaders of the company. That's how we approach hiring people. So we haven't seen the turnover. I would say that it is becoming, the war for talent is real as the economy strengthens. I think the image of the Midwest isn't as, doesn't have the appeal maybe of the image of the West Coast or the East Coast as far as the technology dimension that seems to be such a part of people's lives. But on the other hand, I think that there are people that you sort of have to go for the talent that you need based on who you are and what you need. And there are people, you have to look harder for them, but there are people that don't want to live in California, who actually want to live in Milwaukee or Wisconsin, and try and find those people, because those are the people that are really worth investing in. You won't lose those people. I think this city can do a better job. Julia's here. We talk about it a lot. I grew up in Central New York. I've lived in Boston. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived outside of London. I've lived in Lugano, Switzerland. Milwaukee is the best place I've ever lived. And I'm not just saying that because I live here. This is such an awesome place. Why is that? I'm of two minds, by the way. Why is that not more broadly understood? And I hope the secret doesn't get out. So, because that's part of what makes it awesome. And I think by going after the people that identify with your company or identify with this community, you will make smart investments in the people that you hire. And we don't hire by statistics. Let all those people go to California. I mean, good for them, right? So
it's kind of hard not to use that as the sort of concluding statement. But I have just 3 quick questions, and then we'll wrap. Strategy or execution?
both.
Okay.
That's solving in the right way the wrong problem, or solving in the right way the right problem.
What's your favorite Harley product?
I don't know. Actually, the one I'm riding this morning is amazing. It's a Road Glide Special with the new Milwaukee 8 engine. It's the best motorcycle I've ever owned.
That was actually my third question, is which bike are you going to ride up to?
That one. I have 4. Lucky me.
They're not all new, though. I mean,
they're
you've got
not new,
2012.
and they're different in the sense that they have personalities.
And do they have names?
No, I don't name them. They have names, but they're the names the company gave them.
Okay.
I'm not that. Yeah, we draw the line.
Well,
They have personalities that play to my moods. So when I walk into the garage, I don't have an idea about what I'm going to ride that day, and I let the bike tell me based on the mood I'm in, you know. And so they have. A lot of people think that Harleys are sort of, there's an archetype and they're sort of the same. I have 4 very different ones because of how I feel riding them, and this look, sound, and feel thing. So, and they look different, and that's how I decide.
So the maybe more important question is, does your team know that your bike choice is an indication?
Oh no! Oh no!
I mean, like, okay, she's not going to let me know.
I heard an interview. I like U2 as a band, and I heard an interview with Bono where they have Edge, who's the guitarist. You know, the band will be like, "Oh no, he's into keyboards now. We'll never get a good rock song out of him." You know, so I think that can happen. Although Joanne, I don't believe that that's ever discussed. I'm usually in my bandwidth is pretty tight, even though that you know.
I like it. last question. What's the thing that everyone in the room should do tomorrow to advance growth in this region?
In this region?
Yeah,
You
this
mean
is where we are.
The growth of this region versus the growth of their company?
I won't separate them. They are one and the
Well,
same.
they are one and the same. What I would urge you to do is make sure that you're clear on your purpose, right? Your reason to be as a company. And start doing soul searching on that and make sure that what you put down on paper, what you put on the plaques on the wall is unifying and liberating for your people. And I would say for your business as well. I would urge you to make sure that what you state or put down is not constraining. And I used the example before of, when you say you're about personal freedom, which is our core purpose, you can go a lot of directions with that. Doesn't mean you should. So it can't be so vague as people could go anywhere with it. But I think that's a very important thing to work on as a leader, to help your organization understand what you're there to do, how you're there to do it, and then get on with it, right? So that would be my suggestion for you all.
Please join me in thanking Matt Levatich, CEO of HarleyDavidson. So I made some promises about how efficiently I'm going to get him out of here, but please do note we've got another event coming up soon. I think the information is up there. We look forward to seeing you, and please take seriously the opportunity each of you have to grow your businesses and in fact grow our region. This is the best place.
It is.
So let's make it happen.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm going to walk to the door.
All right.